Hey there. You may or not know me. My name's Luke Young and I've just moved recently from Ireland to Walpole. You've probably heard of Ireland. We're famous for our whiskey, Irish accents, and of course, Bono. I'm going to tell you a bit about my Irish history, about how I've known it and how I've lived it. Most of you may not know much about Ireland. Like most countries, we have a very rich history. But like most countries, we have had our share of civil unrest. The violence that plagued Ireland was called the Troubles, but our trouble was not so simple. Let me explain to you what happened.
Let me give you a short history lesson that begins after the potato famine and early unrest. Charles Stewart Parnell believed in Home Rule, that Ireland should be ruled by an Irish Parliament and separately from Britain. The bill failed to pass twice. During that time, the political party Sinn Féin, we ourselves, were formed, their aim to free Ireland from British rule. In April of 1912, Home Rule for Ireland was approved and was to become law in 1914. In January 1913, the Ulster Volunteer Force was formed. The Protestants in Ulster made it known that they would resist any attempt to introduce Home Rule in Ireland. Between 1912 and 1920, to avoid violence, the British government came up with a solution: Home Rule with partition. Home Rule would be introduced in the southern Ireland, but 6 predominantly Protestant countries in Northern Ireland would stay a part of the United Kingdom. In 1916, as a result of the Easter Uprising, the Irish Republic Army was formed. Rebellion in which Catholic rebels seized the Dublin post office were fired on by the British. 400 people were killed over 5 days, and the rebels who were caught were executed. 1948, the creation of the Republic of Ireland. The Irish Free State was granted full independence from Britain under the terms of the Republic of Ireland Act. The 6 Northern Territories remained part of the United Kingdom. The country lived in relative peace for 40 years between 1922 and the mid-60s. Northern Ireland had been left prosperous by World War II, which favoured its heavy industries.
Well, I grew up in the south of Ireland, down in Limerick, which, was quite a far away from where the Troubles were. But at the same time, I was born, in the late 60s when the Troubles really began. So for me, a lot of what I grew up with was hearing every morning on the radio what had been going on in the north. That day, and throughout the 70s and the 80s, we did not have a lot of issues, down where I was.
In 1971, after repeated assaults by the IRA on British troops, internment was introduced and about 350 people were immediately arrested. January 30th, 1972. A march against internment in Derry resulted in marchers confronting British paratroopers, who then opened fire and killed 14 people and injured 13 others. This incident became known as Bloody Sunday. As a direct result of Bloody Sunday, an increased support for the IRA.
Back in 1974, a group of girls from my all-girl Catholic high school went to Ireland on a senior trip. We were there for about 2 weeks. We landed in Shannon and we went up to Southern Ireland, and it was beautiful, and most of us were just glad to be away from home, and it was a wonderful experience. We did notice as we got closer to Dublin that people who were trying to tour us around wouldn't let us go to certain places. They would say that there was an element about, and we actually were making fun of them. We're like, it's the element. We can't go anywhere because of the element. But we were so young and foolish and kind of stupid when it came to world affairs, so we had no idea what we were walking into. We went to Dublin. We were in Dublin for the last 2 or 3 days of our trip. And we visited all sorts of things. And then on one day, we were supposed to go, they told us to go to O'Connell Street and Parnell Street for shopping. And I guess that would be like going to Newbury Street in Boston. And we went there, and we were spending our last, European money, and we were having a good time and not caring about, kind of what was going on. And all of a sudden, we heard a lot of explosions. We never saw anything. A lot of people running, a lot of noise, and I don't have a very clear memory of it. We didn't have cell phones back in the day, and we just thought people seemed very upset, so we thought we would go back to the hotel. Once we were back at the hotel, the people who were advising our trip and the people who were taking care of us at the Dublin Hotel told us that we needed to stay in the hotel, and we were sequestered in the hotel from that point on. We really didn't understand why, and we were giving this poor old guy a really hard time because we were obnoxious teenagers from the United States, and he actually said to us, the last thing I need on my hands is some dead American Catholic schoolgirls. And he walked away from us. And I remember saying to my friend, he just called us Catholic, like, because we didn't get it. We didn't understand what was going on. Later on, we ended up sneaking out of the hotel, and we went down to this little place, this little pub, and we started having this conversation among ourselves about things that we had no business talking about. We were talking about the IRA. We were talking about the British. We were talking about things we had no business talking about. And at one point, we looked up and we noticed that the entire pub had stopped talking and everyone was staring at us. And it was at that moment I realized we weren't in America anymore.